ticket.
Mention my name.
Next up, we have our class speaker, Matteo Fratelli. Matteo, you go to UNLV?
I do.
Are you guys going to beat Reno?
I pray so.
I'm working that game. We need a win. All right, Matteo is a sophomore at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, studying computer science and political science with the goal of attending law school. He currently serves in the Nevada Army National Guard as an information technology specialist and works with the Southern Nevada Honor Guard team to assist in honoring Nevada's veterans by providing them military funeral honors. He is also active in his church community as a Knight of Columbus. Please welcome Matteo Fratelli.
Well, I was thinking going prosecutor first.
Prosecutor, not a defense attorney. We're good.
He said first.
Then he's got to get paid.
Well, you gotta know how the system works. Thank you, Captain. All right, so I was taught always start off a speech with a hook. So an officer pulls over a man for speeding, and before this man, the driver, by the way, he's wearing a tuxedo, before he can even get a word out to the officer, he blurts out, "Officer, you have to listen to me." The officer goes, "Sir, you were going double the speed limit. I'm writing you a ticket." Well, the driver protests, of course, and there's a back and forth. The officer doesn't give him the time of day. And eventually this escalates to a pretty hostile situation. Driver gets out of the car, officer puts the man under arrest, brings him back to the holding cell at the station. Well, in the holding cell, the officer says to the driver, "All right, well, you're lucky, all right? Sheriff's in a good mood. His daughter is about to go to a wedding. When he comes back, he'll be in a good mood to deal with you." The driver, unfortunately, says to the officer, "Don't count on it, sir. I'm the groom." Friends and fellow classmates, thank you for this opportunity to speak for you and on your behalf to the executive department, the executive staff of our department, and to your friends and family. For the last 3 months, we spent over 36 hours receiving instruction very similar, albeit condensed, to what our men and women in Metro receive as a part of their training. The Citizens Police Academy was founded a decade before I was born by Sheriff Morin, and we've seen over 2,800 alumni graduate and go back into our county to serve, like the captain said, as lay ambassadors, not to advocate on behalf of the department's policies, practices, or personnel, but rather to provide context to our friends and our families when we're in conversation and talking about what the heck Metro does. Now, prior to attending this class in this academy, what I knew about the department I really only got from Facebook and Twitter, following Metro, watching local news, and some friends of mine who are in my guard unit. But that's just it. I only know stuff in a personal context. Now, after 3 months of training, I no longer get to claim ignorance. We no longer get to feign ignorance. We've watched the videos, we've heard the stories, we've listened to 911 calls, and we've put rounds down the same range our officers train on. We have context. Being selected to become a student in this academy is a great privilege, which is now met with a great responsibility. And if you'll indulge me for a few moments, I'd like to speak about a topic today that we're all taught from a very young age to appreciate: gratitude. Next page. Now, Officer McEwen told us that folks call 911 usually on the worst day in their lives. We have folks, usually victims, experience the world around them completely collapsing. But I don't think we as a culture necessarily appreciate what it means to have the society around us collapse. And I don't mean the civil unrest we saw in 2020. The last time we had war on our soil, I was in my mother's womb, when the Twin Towers fell. And before that, we had Pearl Harbor, and then we had the Civil War. War has very rarely touched us domestically, and that's for a variety of reasons. Strong military helps, and strong police force helps too. But by and large, we've never experienced massive collapse of our society, which threatens our freedom and our property. But if we wind the clocks back to 1830, if we cross the Atlantic Ocean, I'd like to tell you a short story about what the law is and why it matters that we as citizens today, in 2022, care about its enforcement. In 1830, after King Louis Philippe I came to power, his kingdom of the government of France put almost all power into the hands of the aristocracy, top like 2%, I believe. The vast majority of middle and working class folks had no political power. They didn't even have the right to vote. so they couldn't rise in the social structure. Now, as unrest and protests grew, as the people wanted freedom, the government started to clamp down on that free speech. Protest organizers acquiesced. They're like, all right, fine, we'll stop protesting. But students and workers didn't quit. And on February 22nd of 1848, the February Revolution, as it became known, was kicked off. We had a 3-day period in France of civil unrest, and this 3-day period led to the complete dissolution of the monarchy and the replacement with a provincial government. Now, this government, in 1848, was dissolved after 2 weeks, couldn't do anything, too big of a country to manage, and this was succeeded by the Executive Committee. This Executive Committee also couldn't govern, and after 46 days, all power was placed in the hands of one individual, General Louis-Eugene Cavaignac, a new monarch. So we had a tyranny, a kingdom, move to republicanism, back to tyranny in less than 70 days. There was no rule of law. It was a complete power grab. And of course, the people suffered for it. Now in 1850, 2 years later, or 170 years ago, famed French economist Frederick Bastiat wrote a little book, about 70 pages, called The Law. And he wrote, quote, "The law is the organization of the natural right of self-defense. When law enforced keep a man within the bounds of justice, they impose nothing upon him but a mere negation. They oblige him to abstain from doing harm. They guard only the personality, liberty, and the property of others. They fulfill a mission whose legitimacy is not to be disputed. The aim of the law is to prevent injustice from reigning," end quote. All right, so what's Bastiat saying here? This is a really long-winded way of saying that the law is a part of each and every one of us. It's an extension of ourselves. Now, we in Nevada, we affect this law by voting in representatives, by electing folks to create laws in Carson City. We vote in governors, we vote in district attorneys, we vote an attorney general and a sheriff to enforce these laws. We vote in judges to pass down rulings on these laws as they affect us. The law is a part of us as Americans. So the vision of Metro, then, is to be the safest community in America. Over the last 12 weeks, we've heard from over 24 instructors telling us all across the department, except I don't think we had an accounting class, but that's okay, from all across the department, about the work and training they receive to keep us safe, to ensure that Clark County is the safest community in the United States. And I believe it. I believe that our department's commitment to transparency is unparalleled, not just throughout Nevada, but throughout the United States. I believe our MaxAC instructors when they tell us that our SWAT teams are the best in the country because they win all the trophies. I believe that despite seeing some of the worst evils that men can commit, and probably being frustrated with the political and judicial processes in the execution of justice, our detectives and our investigators know that the work they do and the peace they provide to victims is worth the horror that they witness. But we know that this is not the end of the story. Sergeant Hughes and Sergeant Puckmeyer can do all the work they can to ensure that our officers' activities are in keeping with the Constitution, state law, and department policies. Lieutenant Roberts, Detective Gillis, Detective Costello, and Sergeant Carroll can spend hundreds and hundreds of man-hours pursuing the worst bad actors in our community. The folks over at the Clark County Detention Center can deal with some of the most disagreeable folks in our community. And our range staff can spend hundreds of hours training our officers on less than lethal and lethal weapons so that they can handle them properly downrange when the situation calls for it. We can know the best practices when it comes to active assailants or identity theft. We can be taught on canines. We can be taught that our department has the best techniques and technologies to find missing persons. And we can put ourselves in the shoes of an officer in a ride-along. We can do all these things to fight for a safe community, to be aware of a safe county. But that isn't the end of the story. What is the value of a safe community, even the safest community, if we as citizens have very little to show for it? How are we, in the execution of the responsibilities of our lives, reflecting gratitude that is worth the sacrifice that these men and women commit for each and every one of us every day? Over the last 12 weeks, we've seen that our community, our county, has the finest coalition of men and women from every background, every race, every religion, every creed, who have committed themselves to stand in the face of danger to you and me and tell that danger to turn around and put its hands behind its back. How blessed are we? We can't say thank you enough, the words thank you enough, for all the time that you put in, all the parts of your heart that you sacrifice, so that we don't have to see and hear what you have to see and hear. friends we can put on social media and we can tell our friends all that we learned, and these are good things. But that alone doesn't suffice. And I'm on the last page, I promise. These officers and their leadership, they're executors of the law, but as we discussed in the beginning, the law is a part of each and every one of us. If we believe then that the function of the law is to prevent injustice from reigning, that it's effectively identical to we as a community saying, get away from my family, or step off my land, because someone's actions or temperament have threatened us and that which we hold dear, then the onus is on us to live lives that are worth that sacrifice. We have to do something about that, to reflect gratitude for the price that has to be paid every day to live in an orderly society. The second law of thermodynamics, known as the law of entropy, tells us that in any system, if no new energy is put in or taken out, that system's potential energy will be, the concluding potential energy will be less than that of the starting energy. Put another way, unless we work to clean things and make them orderly and safe, systems break down. It's the same thing with societies. Unless we commit time and energy to protecting our streets and investigating crimes and catching bad guys, society breaks down just like it did in 19th century France. Sergeant Puckmeyer was correct when he called the Constitution of the United States the finest document in the world, which has allowed our republic to be the finest nation in the world. The preamble to our Constitution reads in part, "We the people of the United States, in order to establish justice and secure the blessings of our liberty, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America." The bedrock of our society is built to prevent injustice so that we may work, so that our children and our grandchildren may prosper. So my friends, let's recommit ourselves and our energies to living lives of gratitude, thanking officers when we get the chance. I see them pretty often at Tropical Smoothie right here in Cheyenne. and being aware, voting for elected officials who reflect our values, and paying attention to the state of our community. Apathy does not save a community from ruin, but rather gratitude is the moral shield which protects our businesses, it protects our places of worship, and our families. So our verbal thank yous don't even come close to expressing the gratitude we do. But for the last 3 months, hopefully this is the beginning that we can aptly reflect gratitude. So I'm so thankful to be living in Clark County that's protected by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. God bless you.